The East African region, more than any other region in Africa, is endowed with enormous development supportive resources, including productive lands, sufficient industrial and precious minerals, large quantities of fauna and flora, fairly skilled manpower, navigable inland waterways, and capped with transformative economic strategies adopted at the regional and national levels within a fairly stable macroeconomic environment. In order to exploit the advantages created by the foregoing endowments, the region's partner states, the republics of Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and South Sudan are fully aware that efficient transport infrastructure and services must be developed to underpin the region's competitiveness through expanded regional transportation capacities and reduced costs of transport. This would, among others, trigger efficiencies in trade facilitation, location of industries, and exploitation of the enormous resources and growth potentials in the region. To adequately address the question of infrastructure development and with the visions to elevate their economies to middle income levels within the next 10 to 15 years, partner states under the East African Community continue to invest in projects designed towards addressing the state of the region's poor and inadequate infrastructure.
Over the last 3-4 years in most of the partner states, the budget for infrastructure development has been doubled. So this is very important because it is what is needed to really make East Africa the preferred destination for investment and industrial development. And I think this is the kind of ambition East Africa needs to display, because we have a lot. We have a big market, we have the resources, we have the consumers, because now we have a population of close to 150 million people. So we have all the attributes to really transform the East African community into a powerhouse.
Decisive efforts towards increasing transportation efficiencies and capacities have been directed towards railways upgrades from narrow to standard gauge, expanding and improving the road network, decongesting the port access infrastructure and terminals, enhancing access to reliable power supply and energy systems, and addressing the facilitation aspects of transportation and installation of efficient border controls. The idea of developing these prioritized infrastructure projects jointly is to enhance the regional competitiveness and strengthen the nascent East African Community Common Market, anchored on a firm foundation of efficient transport and energy infrastructure and services. As envisaged, these renewed infrastructure and improved transportation services are spurring rapid industrialization of the community economies, reducing the financial and temporal costs of transit transport, which eventually will lead to increased trade between the partner states and beyond as one of the sustainable ways to catapult them into middle-income status. Infrastructure development is a means to an end, and the end in this case is better trade between East African Community partner states and the neighboring sub-regions, reduced cost of doing business, and easy movement of people, goods, and services. Development of efficient railway systems in the EAC has been touted as a means towards enhancement of connectivity and linkages between the ports and the hinterland to enable cross-border trade and heavy industrial development buoyed by the cheaper means of transport. For a long time, the region's rail systems have suffered due to delayed maintenance and investments in railways' rolling stocks, locomotives, and permanent way. Thus, their contribution to regional transport capacities has been woefully low and declining over time. The good news is, change is here.
So the development of standard gauge railway is supposed to provide, once again, in a transformative land transport infrastructure that will help the region move to the middle income status as a region. The East African community has been working towards political integration of the peoples, a population of close to 200 million people, and we cannot be able to do that if we do not have land transport infrastructure that is efficient and that is cost effective. That is the gap that standard gauge railway is coming to fill.
Upon completion, the Northern Corridor standard gauge railways will be linking Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan. And through the implementation process, communities are already reaping early transformational benefits.
The government has played a very important role in this because, as you see, all the local subcontractors we are having are benefiting from this SGR. And most of the work is being done by the local people. Most of the supplies is being done by the local people. So basically, it has actually benefited so many people in this community.
So far, we have implemented phase 1. We are currently at 97% implementation. And briefly, we have done all the civil works, all the bridges are in place, all the earthworks have been completed, and we are now doing the final kilometers in terms of laying the track. The total length of that section is 472 kilometers. The stations are currently under construction. The works on communication, electricity and signaling is currently upwards of 60%, and we are targeting to complete those by the end of the year. Locomotives, wagons and coaches are already being manufactured. We expect to receive the first lot of 6 locomotives by the end of this year. We expect to launch this project on the 1st of June 2017 for trial operations, and full-scale commercial operations will peak come January 2018.
When we hear about SGR, we are really happy in that will save our road, in that much of the heavy cargo actually will now get into the rail. And if that happens, then our roads certainly are going to be much better in terms of they're not going to carry very heavy traffic or even high traffic, as it were.
The Central Corridor Standard Gauge Railways project, linking Tanzania to Rwanda, Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo, commences soon as well. The eventual launch of the 2 SGR railway systems is envisioned to not only revolutionize freight and passenger transport in the region, but also form a land bridge across the states.
The standard gauge railway is a game changer in the region. It will help to reduce the travel time, the transit time, but also the cost of transportation along the corridor. It will extremely being reduced along the corridor through the standard gauge railways.
Recognizing that we are in a region that is one of the fastest growing regions in the world, and with a deficient land transport infrastructure like we currently do, standard gauge railway development is very timely.
Ports are critical nodes in the overall transportation system in the East African community. It is through the EAC ports of Mombasa and Dar es Salaam especially that the partner states transact 90% of their international trade volumes. Understanding the important role the ports play in facilitating international trade, countries with access to seaports are investing in improving port capacity and are also working hard to benchmark the region's port performance with those of developed world efficient ports such as Singapore, Rotterdam, and Hamburg, among others. Modernization is the way to go, and so far, Kenya and Tanzanian governments have since embarked on harmonizing their sea and inland ports operational standards, incorporating best practices in ports operations, investing in new technologies, new ports infrastructure, enhancing port logistics through interconnectivity, and embracing automation of services.
These last 3 years, the Port of Mombasa has improved the vessel turnaround at the port, which passed, our target was to reach in 1 year 72 hours of ship turnaround. Currently we are 66 hours of ship turnaround. It means the productivity at the port has also improved. Document processing center is another improvement. If you look at how long it takes by custom, by KRA, Kenya Revenue Authority, to approve a particular declaration entry within the system has also improved. It's around 2 hours to approve an entry. And then the clearing and forwarding agent can now lodge the entry in the system and also pay, and the goods can be released from the port.
So the levels of automation have been growing. Right now where we are is that we have full-time online communication with our clients. So we have seen improved times in clearance. We have seen improved revenue, especially now with the recent automation of transit management. We have seen tremendous improvement in transit time. So what used to take 7 days now is taking 1 day. And why? Because we have full visibility of the cargo.
These developments are not only reducing ports' cargo dwell times for containers and general cargo, but are playing a significant part in reducing the overall cost of doing business in the region. The region's economies are growing, hence the need for newer facilities like Lamu Port in Kenya and the Begani Port in Tanzania. The addition of these two new international ports will expand the capacity of the region in maritime transport and offer extended maritime services to neighboring countries, among them the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Malawi, and Zambia. Further, the port of Bujumbura, earmarked for expansion, and Kigoma Port in Tanzania will be key players towards linking the EAC to Uvira Port in Congo and Mpulungu Port in Zambia. Expansion of major roads interconnecting the EAC partner states is also a priority activity. Several kilometers of new upgraded roads have been developed in the community in the last 5 years. These roads are providing additional capacities for transport and enhancing accessibility to the hinterlands of the EAC while easing the movement of persons and goods. Stakeholders in land-linked partner states are certainly welcoming these developments in a big way, as they appreciate them as a way of reducing the cost they incur for transit transport. Completed road projects like Kenya's Thika Superhighway continues to offer learning curves to other East Africa partner states on how roads can transform entire landscapes and grow economies, besides decongesting a city and reducing time wasted on traffic jams. Tanzania's investment in her intercity bus system, Bus Rapid Transit System, also a first in the EAC, is already operational. The enormous success of the first phase of the BRT operations has triggered a quick agreement to proceed with Phase 2 to bring on board other unserved neighborhoods of the city of Dar es Salaam.
Hiki kituo ni Jangwani bus station. Abiria anapanda humu tayari alishalipa pesa huko alikotoka. Kwa maana kuna utaratibu, kuna sehemu ya kukatia tiketi ambapo utaacha pesa hapo na abiria ataingia kwenye gari ili afike safari yake.
The residents of Dar are enjoying the benefits of decongesting the city and easy movements across the city. Other cities could learn from the successful BRT operations and replicate the system in the EAC region. East Africa's economic fortunes and industrial renaissance are inexorably linked to the cost of energy in the region. From the high cost of delivered power to power outages and low access to modern energy resources, the EAC has a substantial power deficiency that negatively impacts on the growth of its industries and hence penalizes its potential economic outputs. East African Community Partner States have realized the need for accelerated investments in power generation, distribution and interconnectivity infrastructure and efficient energy markets.
Now, we have something called the East Africa Power Pool, which the ADB is actively supporting. Through that power pool, we are now creating the mechanisms and the regulations and standards for the trading of power. Well, this is important is that if you are a private, an independent power producer, let's say in Kenya, and you are worried that Kenya may not need all this power and you may be stuck with excess power, you don't need to worry anymore because through this power pool, you will be able to sell your power to any one of these 5-6 countries.
The issue of alternative power generation has been given prominence with geothermal, wind, methane, and natural gas and coal attracting renewed investor interests and government support.
When we look at the whole equation of the power mix, geothermal turns out to be the least cost way of providing power to this nation. And what that means is, as we develop geothermal, we are then able to displace the more expensive power from the fossil fuel. And as the economies of the East African region get cheaper power, it will be possible for the goods that are produced from these countries to be more competitive.
Though there is a level of progress and success so far, EAC's priority infrastructure projects requires to be upscaled, more so with the help of the private sector if the region is to reap the fruits of efficient infrastructure sooner.
In most of our countries, for developing infrastructures, we have approached traditional donors, such as the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the World Trade Organization. We are very happy, and these partners can really provide a limited amount of funds. The private sector is needed to really be able to achieve what we want to achieve. We have been also thinking about developing our capital markets because they are really a sizable source of funding for infrastructure. And the East African community also is working on the East African Development Fund so that we can really have sustainable financing mechanisms for our projects.
Other partner states can borrow a leaf from Tanzania that has already in place measures to attract private sector investment, especially in the area of ports, through policy and incentives, an arrangement that has seen Dar es Salaam Container Terminal concessioned to Tanzania International Container Terminal Services, TICTS. The demand for regional infrastructure development to address the needs for seamless connectivity between states cannot be gainsaid. The full and equitable benefits from the EAC common market will soon substantially be realized since land-linked countries like Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and South Sudan are being enabled to bring down their high transit transport costs arising from multiple border stoppages and crossings, non-tariff barriers, high costs of transit charges, transport bonds, and high insurance charges for international transport, among others. Notable achievement is the removal of illegal roadblocks within the transit corridors, and this has contributed to reduced turnaround on transit times by trucks on the roads. Soft infrastructure improvements in the EAC, like the harmonized vehicle load controls, a key control measure to ensure lorries and trucks adhere to axle load and don't eventually damage the roads through overloading, are paying returns too. Corridor observatories are welcoming legislations that have created an enabling environment for them to achieve more on their mandates on ensuring some maintenance measures are exercised on these projects as they are being developed.
Around 14 stakeholders involved in maintenance of the road. the user, agreed with a number of undertaking, how they'll contribute in the maintenance of the road network. And we monitor also the performance at Weighbridge, how the user, how the trucks comply with the provision under the law. If you compare the level of compliance along the Northern Corridor from last year compared with the current level during these last 2 years, you'll see we passed from 75% of level of compliance to above 90% of level of compliance. Our target is to have 100% of level of compliance on vehicle load along the corridor, because our countries, they are investing heavily in infrastructure and on an annual basis. Those infrastructure must be maintained.
Partner states have embraced weigh-in-motion technologies, a technology that weighs trucks as they drive on and has been installed in selected regions' weighbridge stations. Truck drivers are a happy lot since they are now spending less time compared to the past at the various weighbridge stops.
Weigh-in-motion bring a lot of efficiency because only the overloaded vehicles will pass through the static weighbridge. This weigh-in-motion will screen out those which are likely to be overloaded, which is about 30% will have to pass through static weighbridge.
Harmonization of border crossings procedures through the one-stop border post concept and simplification of customs procedures is a welcomed idea too.
Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki imekuwa iko nzuri. Ni kuungana pamoja, ukitoka upande wa Tanzania ukija upande wa Rwanda na kwa sawa, ukitoka upande wa Rwanda kwenda Tanzania na kwa iko sawa. Clearing yote wako sehemu moja. Hamna kutoka fasi moja kwenda fasi nyingine. Ukiingia ofisi moja, clearing yote iko sawa.
Movement of goods and people across the borders is now more efficient since the one-stop border post concept combines two stops in one and consolidates function in a shared workspace for exiting one country and entering another, thus reducing on-travel time for travelers and freight vehicles.
The OSBP have bring a lot of changes. First of all, the trucks have to stop at Rwandan side, and both officers are there of Rwandans and Tanzanians. They work together, and then if any problem happens, they can be able to resolve straight away. And the clearance time now have been reduced compared to the last to previously process. Another impact is these street vendors. You know, you can see people from Rwanda coming to buy things in Tanzania, and the people from Tanzania going to buy something from Rwanda. Yeah, it's how we can be able to work very closely.
The vision of an interconnected East Africa is no longer a distant dream. Much has been done so far to realize it, and more is in the pipeline.
The EAC heads of state have adopted a very ambitious program, and that program actually covers the period going from 2014 to 2024 and amounts to $100 billion. So we think that this is the kind of ambition that the East African community has to display in light of the potential we represent. We have a big market, we have a big population, we have many types of resources. So that infrastructure needs to be in place to really be able to transform the community into an economic powerhouse.
By and large, with the current strong and focused leadership of the EAC heads of state in the development of priority infrastructure and deepening regional integration that is opening up opportunities for development in the region, an efficient infrastructure interlinked and interconnected East Africa is possible. A crucial step towards getting the community closer to realizing part of her very mission of a developed and empowered East African community, ready for economic takeoff. One people, one destiny.